out and then so okay, my name is Debo Onifade, and I am the author of Liberating Nigeria, Guide to Winning Elections, and Reviving Our Country, with forward by Mr. Femi Falana SAN. And I just want to address three topics today. One is the recent blame game between the federal government of Nigeria and governors. The federal government is saying that the governors have not helped to alleviate poverty, and state governments blaming the federal government in return. What is my take? I'm on the side of the federal government. I've written about this, I've talked about this in my book, I have written articles about this, and I think it's important for Nigerians to begin to talk more about state government, to begin to discuss their governor's performance rather than talk only about federal government performance. We keep talking about devolution of powers, and we forget that to a great extent, Nigeria, power has been, to a great extent, the governors have significant powers. Uh, First, it is true that Nigerian governors, especially in the south, spend a lot more money uh, on urban development, building overhead bridges. Some in some locations where these are necessary, expanding road networks in the urban cities, and really spending time to build schools in the villages. Really spending time to improve healthcare in the villages, really spending time to connect villages with the cities, and forgetting the fact that because a lot of production happen in the villages and the rural areas, it's more important economically to connect these rural areas to the cities than creating overhead bridges in the cities. Because when you connect, when you create better connection from the rural areas where a lot of agricultural production takes place, then it's easier for these guys to move in their goods to the city. If you give them access, better access to infrastructure, healthcare, power, schools, there is a greater likelihood for people to remain in the rural areas. You need people, younger people, to continue to produce in the rural areas. If everybody moves to the cities and we don't have production and we don't have people producing, I'm talking about agricultural production, and I'm talking about low level production this time around, what we do in Nigeria right now. If you do not build the villages, if you do not motivate people to stay back, and you neglect the rural areas, many people are going to move to the villages. Food will continue to be expensive because these guys have to spend hours on the road. It's so difficult for them to bring their produce to the cities. We're not going to do well as a nation. It's impossible. It's impossible to think that you can build the urban centers, you can build those bridges, and think you will solve poverty. No, the poorest people are in the rural areas, are in the villages. And unfortunately for us, they're more productive many times than people in the cities, in the agricultural, in the agricultural sector. Now, why would you neglect such people? And again, don't forget, even during voting, these guys vote. So I just don't understand why you would spend bulk of your money as a state governor building overhead bridges, expanding road networks, sometimes in locations that are not congested, and you neglect people in the villages. You don't fix their healthcare, you don't fix their schools, you don't fix their power. More importantly, you do not do anything to improve road networks, which from those locations to the cities. And as long as governors continue to do that, we will not make decent progress. And I am fully on the side of the federal government in that regard. And we need to call our governors out. And they keep asking for devolution. They need more money. What are they doing with the money they have? That's why when I talk to people about restructuring, I put in my book, I wrote a complete chapter on restructuring. And I said, hey, if all you care about is give more power, give more money to the governors, what about the current performance with what they have? It is risky. These governors will not spend the money. Look at this issue of local government autonomy. The governors want to collect money from money meant for the local governments. And after they've spent it on whatever they like, they give peanuts to the chairman. Go pay salaries and just go enjoy. And the salaries, the chairman, guess what? They just pay salaries, the rest they pocket. So I think it's important, for people to talk about it. And personally, I just want to be public that I think that I support the federal government. I think it's that people blame Buhari, blame federal government. No, 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 no. Buhari is at fault, but it's important also to call our governors out. The second thing I want to talk about is related to the issue of dollars. And again, this is going to be an unpopular view. Um, we keep talking about dollar scarcity. This central bank governor recently came to blame people, and I said, okay, let's talk about an area right now from A for students. First of all, full disclosure, I'm not one of those people that um, see people's traveling as brain drain. No, I think it's good for people to travel when they leave. What we just need to do is to train people in Nigeria. I always say there are many more smarter people in Nigeria than the ones that have traveled. Uh, Oftentimes, the diaspora people fool themselves. They like to fool themselves, or they probably like to feel good and say that the smartest people have left Nigeria. No, there are still many smart people in Nigeria, many of them. Many just need to be trained to be ready to take up roles. So I'm not against, I fully support the fact that people can travel because it creates room for Nigerians in Nigeria to grow. However, if a lot of people are traveling and they continue to get access to dollars at central bank rate, the question I've always asked is, people traveling, it's about adding value to themselves. And eventually to add value to Nigeria because they will send money back home to help their family. But primarily it's to improve themselves and their families, which is great. But how does that improve our economy? Why would you be giving dollars to people for school abroad? Now, the reason why the central bank is not going to stop it is because the rich sends their kids abroad and they will not allow the central bank to stop giving them dollars. I think that's not priority for us now. If in the years ago when we did not have scarcity of dollars, we can give people dollars for education. But when there is scarcity of dollars, why do we continue to give dollars to Nigerians traveling abroad for education? You give them money for upkeep, and you continue to say the dollars is scarce. How do you compare that with those Igbo traders who need money to import, who need dollars to import important items to Nigeria? Who needs dollars more? Of course, I support the Igbo traders who need to import important items to Nigeria. Those guys need dollars much more than elites that are going abroad for school. And I'm just being fair here. I have friends, family, you know, who also are moving for educational reasons, who are getting access to these dollars. But to be objective, this should not be a group. We should not give priority to this group. They're relocating, they're going for master's degree to develop themselves and their families. Great. We should not in any way dissuade people from this. However, how do you compare them with that trader that needs dollars to buy items to Nigeria, to import items to Nigeria, which will help our economy? That trader has to go and bribe or beg or stay on queue for 6 months, 10 months, waiting for dollars. But that student, because he has an uncle in a bank, gets $10,000, sometimes $50,000, a lot of money, because he's traveling abroad for schooling. It's important to start getting our priorities right. It will be painful. I think we need to prioritize traders, importers, genuine importers. I'm not talking about importers that are, just collecting the dollars and selling it. No, genuine importers, LC. People, you're not giving them the cash. You're helping them to use the funds to import essential items to Nigeria. I think that's very important. And it will hurt the elites, but I think our economy, our local economy in Nigeria is more important than what the elites want. Okay. I think the third thing I want to talk about, third and final thing I want to talk about is this issue of Naira redesign and uh, reducing how much Naira you can collect from the bank cash in a week. It's really shocking and disappointing. And sometimes I don't understand how CBN people come up with you know, these policies. I have an aunt in Nigeria who, um, they cannot even sign. He's not as educated enough to be able to sign. She does thumbprint. So because of that, she can't use an ATM. She doesn't have a smartphone to do transfers. So she has a small business, banks, and she has to do cash all the time. There are millions of people like that in Nigeria. Perhaps majority of the traders in Nigeria are like that. You're going to ruin their business if you don't, if the central bank does not um, adjust this policy. How do you wake up one day and say people cannot take more than 150,000 a week cash? You need to think about the people in the country and the infrastructure before you come up with things like this. I'm okay. I agree there should be limits, especially corruption and things like that. But as you're thinking of curbing corruption and so many, but you also have to think about the populace, the regular people. I'm a little bit of anti-elite many times. I think more about those people than the elites because they are more. The majority of Nigerians are in that category, and I kind of identify more, even in my write-ups, my leanings. I identify more with those people, and I think that's important to consider them a lot. We can't just wake up one day and say, "Oh, because we want to curb corruption, people," yeah, which is important, and you don't think about those people. And thinking about those people also means talking to them, you know, talking to their leaders, try to find out about their challenges, and how can you create policies that doesn't hurt, policies that will not hurt their business. So my personal opinion, that amount is too small. We have to think about education, infrastructure. It's not cheap to have a smartphone. You have to have some money to have a smartphone. You have to be a little bit educated to be able to use a smartphone, to be able to transfer funds. Those things are going to take time. Um, you're not going to solve education crisis in 1 year, And as long as you have those challenges, I think it's a policy that needs to be reviewed. I don't mean scrapping it, but the CBN needs to look at the amounts, and I think that's my view on that. Okay, so if you want to order my book, it's on Amazon. It's also in major universities, the biggest universities in Nigeria: the University of Ibadan, University of Lagos, Obafemi Awolowo University. The bookstores, it's in the biggest stores in Nigeria: Roving Heights, booksellers, as well as many other bookstores in Nigeria. I think that will be all for today. Until I come your way again, you can make comments. You can follow me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. I wish you a blessed weekend. Bye.